welcome to Run to the Hills episode 10. Here we are, another Friday, and we're looking forward to sharing this episode with you. Now, this one's going to be all about last weekend's 2020 Autumn 100, and we've got some great interviews that we're going to share with you. But first of all, Eddie, how are you, and how is life in France? A little bit snowy, is it?
Cold. I sent you that picture on WhatsApp, didn't I, yesterday? And I had planned a long run up. So we live about 1,200 meters here. And I planned a long run up to Avoriaz, which is one of the highest ski resorts around here. I think it's 2,100 meters. And we were covered in snow. The path we chose was a bit dodgy. And there was quite a lot of snow and rocks to plow through. And then we got to the top and I planned to do an extra loop at the top, but it was freezing and we couldn't see anything. We literally couldn't see each other next to each other. And we all sort of looked at each other and went, yeah, no. I feel we have a really long winter here. And so we all feel we don't need to put ourselves through that cold pain quite yet. But so, yeah, it's cold. It's a little bit wet, but I just did yesterday my last long sort of hilly run before the South Downs Way 100, which sadly, very unlikely that I'm going to be able to do. But I won't cry, just have a moment. But I wanted to finish my block of training anyway, because I felt like that would be good closure, even though I can't get over to do the race. And I felt that it would be just to stop training and just be like, well, I can't get to the race, I'm not going to train, is not perhaps how I would expect my clients and my friends and my kids to behave, just because I don't get the race at the end of the training block. I felt that by carrying on the sort of process of the training, I was still going to I've had like the best block of training going into this race, no injuries. I've had to manage a few like knee niggles and things, but nothing major. I've been absolutely dedicated to my strength work and done I think I've missed like half an hour of running that I'd planned over the last 10 weeks. So it's gone so well. So though I'm absolutely gutted that I'm not going to be able to get over to the South Downs Way 100, I'm really proud of myself that I've carried on and done this training block and finishing it off. And I will then turn all social media off for the weekend of the South Downs Way 100 and sulk.
I know it is a shame, isn't it? And I think people listening to this, watching this, will a lot of people be in similar situations.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You're not alone, and it is.
No,
it is quite
small.
tough.
It's small. It really doesn't, as my husband says, it doesn't matter. And I felt kind of the last few weeks, I felt like I mean, we've got quite a few cases in Morsey now of COVID, and as this sort of, it feels a little bit out of control. And I thought this is a little thing that I don't need to come over. Not that I can't anyway, but it's a little thing that don't need to travel. We all need to do our bit right now. And we all want life to go back to normal. And the more we sort of batten down the hatches now, the quicker life is going to go back to normal. So really, it's no big, in the big scheme of things, much worse things are happening than me missing a race. Yeah. I say that.
Well, just to add injury to insult, I've got the Hardmoors 55, which is a week tomorrow, and I did my final 2 sessions. So I did the Monday night club session, and then I did a dress rehearsal run on the Wednesday morning. I like to sort of have the final run with all my gear, just to make sure the rucksack's right and the water bottle's okay and it works all right. So I went out at 6:15 on Wednesday morning, and it was pitch dark for about an hour and a half until about 7:45 when the light came up. But it was lovely. I really enjoyed that run. So I feel as though I'm ready. I've got my start time. It's like all the races at the moment, it's more of a time trial. So I'm starting at 8:46 with a couple of friends, Andy and Sarah Norman, who are regular listeners to this show. They're good friends. So we asked, could we start together? So we're going to start. And then my number's 198. And there is a tracker. So next week I'll put a link on if anyone wanted to follow me. And I also
are you going to run together? Are you going to run together with the Normans? Or?
Yeah, we're going to start together, and because they always run together. But we'll start and we'll see how far we get. We're not committed to staying the whole race. If they're stronger, they'll go ahead. If I'm stronger, I'll go ahead. But it'd be nice just to catch up.
You'll just drop them. You'll just drop them.
That's
Use
right.
them and just drop them.
So, but it'd be nice just to catch up for at least an hour or two when we set off. Also wanted to mention this week that we've had a couple of things which are not on our podcast, but on our YouTube channel. For those who just listen to the podcast, you may know or not know that we have a YouTube channel as well, and the episode goes out on that. But we also do a few extra things which are just on the YouTube. And there was two things this week. Last Sunday, I started a series called Countdown to the Spine with Stephen Brown. Stephen Brown has done the spine race 5 times the last 5 years. Great guy, got lots of experience. So we're doing a countdown with him. And it was 13 weeks last Sunday. So we found out a little bit about it, where he is at the moment. And then we're going to meet every 2 or 3 weeks and share that on Facebook, on YouTube. And basically he's going to share a top tip each time. So whether it's kit or pacing or sleep strategy, and I think that's going to be really helpful. And a number of people have watched that. So if you haven't watched it and you're interested in the spine, then I'd encourage you to go along to our YouTube channel. I'll put the links on the show notes. Well,
that's brilliant, John. That's brilliant, John, because I've coached quite a few people doing the spine, and it's the lack of being able to pull that knowledge all together, because the kit list is, I mean, you need a second mortgage for that kit list, don't you? And to actually have somebody who's done it 5 times, to have all that information in one place and to sort of follow them through the training cycle now as you go on, that's invaluable.
Yeah, thank you. Wow. And I think Stephen as well, he is someone who researches really well, and he's tried the different socks and he's tried the different kit, and he's found what he feels works for him. Mightn't work for everybody, but he'll certainly be able to help people as they start to buy kits and think about that. And then the second one, we had our second live interview, and that was with Nicky Spinks on Tuesday. And it was lovely to chat to Nicky. She's a lovely runner, lovely person. And we talked about the 3 double rounds that she's done. We talked about the Tour de Giants. She had some great advice on sleep and managing that and pacing, and she's just an all-round experienced runner. So if you've not listened to that and not watched that one, again, there'll be a link on the show notes, and I would encourage you to do that. Okay, we're going to move now to the race results.
Couple of races we wanted to talk about. Run to the Sea Ultra, 50k from Ringwood to Bournemouth. I used to teach in a terrible school in Ringwood. Oh, it gives me shakes. But 445 people finished. It's huge. That's a huge race. Harry Smith won in 3 hours, 25, 48 seconds. And Natasha Smith, not far behind, in 3 hours, 49 and 20 seconds. That must be along by the coast.
And then the second race that we saw was one up in Scotland, in the northeast of Scotland, and it's called the Bennachie Ultra. Again, 50k, and they had 110 finishes. And I looked at the website, looked an interesting course. It was like 2 big loops. So it was like an outer loop and then an inner loop. But I saw some photos, a few friends did it, and everyone said it was really friendly and a great route. So that's obviously going to become a regular, hopefully, in Scotland. And the winner of that race was Robbie Simpson in a time of 3 hours, 45:56. And the ladies' winner was Meryl Cooper in 4 hours, 29:48. So well done to everyone.
I think they were both course records, both those finishers. They're both trail internationals, those 2 runners. So I reckon those times they're pretty fast. They're probably going to stand for a few years now.
Yeah. Okay, so well done to everyone who took part in those races. And if you've got other races that we don't know about, please let us know and we'll feature those on this part of our podcast. Okay, we're going to move on to our top tips. Now, this week, it was my turn, and I wanted to do something which has been on my sort of thoughts for quite a while, and that is being able to finish well. I wrote a blog post, which, well, again, I'll put a link on the show notes, but I basically talked about the fact that the first 3 years of doing ultras, I improved each year from the age of 48 up to 50. Each year, particularly the West Highland Way, I got faster and faster. And then I had a couple of years where things got really hard. I started to struggle over the last 10, 15 miles. I did a West Highland Way that took me 7 hours longer than my best time. And it was a death march to get there. My first Lakeland 100 was the same. My feet were in bits and it was just agony, really. I was proud of the fact of finishing, but it wasn't pretty. And I started to wonder whether I was too old to do 100-mile races. And maybe I should just stick with the 50 miles and that was a bit more manageable. But I wasn't quite ready to give up. So in 2013, I entered the West Highland Way again. And I thought, right, I'm not going to worry about trying to get sub 20 in my better times. All I'm interested in is finishing well. I wanted to be able to enjoy the last 14 miles from Kinlochleven to the end and finish with a smile on my face. So I decided to do that. I really needed to start a lot easier than I had done in the past. And so the whole mantra, the whole race, I just kept thinking about the end and making sure that I walked all the hills. I kept my heart rate down. I kept my breathing down. And I got to Glencoe with about 20 odd miles to go. And I went through a bit of a bad time, a bit of a sticky time. And it was almost as if my mind was saying, you need to ease off. If you want to finish well, you can't push it too early. And I got through that. And then I got to Kinlochleven and I walked the last 14 miles in a similar time to what I'd done when I'd done my sub-20s. And that really encouraged me that I was able to still do these at my age and still enjoy them. And then from that point onwards, I really started to have this as my main goal, is to finish well. And it came to a head really, or came to probably one of my best races was the second Lakeland 100 that I did. And I was determined to try and get under 30 hours. That was my big goal. And I felt I was capable of doing that, but only if I paced it well, because the second half of the route is really hard, a lot of tough downhill runs. And if you're not able to run the second half in the downhills in the second half, then you're giving away time and positions. So that was, again, my real mantra. So I decided by then I was working to heart rate. And my friend Robert Osfield helped me to think about what heart rate I needed to have for a long race. And for a race like the Lakeland, I was going to take me 30 hours. He reckoned I needed to keep my heart rate under 125 particularly for the first 5 or 6 hours. And it was hard. It took a lot of discipline because as you come out of Kynaston, if you know the route, a big climb out of Kynaston. And to keep your heart rate that low, I really had to just take it really easy. And people were streaming past me and I thought, no, I'm just going to stick to this. And I got to the first checkpoint and I was 201st out of about 304, I think, started that year. And then I just kept going and I just kept my heart rate down. After about 5 hours, it's hard to get your heart rate above 125. So it's just what it is then. But by then I'd got into a good position. And I ended up finishing 60th in 29 hours, 36 minutes. And I was so pleased with myself that I was able to accomplish that. And I think that was the race that really just cemented to me that that's how I want to do ultras from now on, to try and start steady and try and finish well. And I've wrote down in the blog 5 points that I think are my top tips for finishing well. Now, I'm very aware that people like to do things differently. And I know some people love to go off hard and to run as hard as they can and hang on. And that's fine. But these are my tips for if you've had some tough races and you want to enjoy them a bit more and finish well, then these would be my 5 top tips. The first one would be to be realistic with your time goal. I think if you have a time goal which is beyond your ability, the temptation is to push too hard at the beginning, and that makes it worse. Secondly, is to start really comfortably. And if you think you're starting comfortably, go even more comfortable. There was a lady who did the West Highland Way a couple of years ago, and she decided to walk the first mile and let everybody go. And then she sort of ran her own race, and she ended up finishing under 23 hours and having a great time because she spent the whole day just catching people. So that was good. So start comfortably. Walk the hills early on. Now, again, this wouldn't apply to people at the top end of the field, people like you, Eddie, who are going to win races. But for those of us down the field, I think if you can start as you mean to go on and walk the hills early on, that's really important. I remember doing a race in Wales, the 10 peaks in the Brecon Beacons, and it's a big climb up as you start. And there was people going past me that were breathing as if they were doing a hard 10K. And I'm thinking, there's 50 miles of this, there's 10 massive hills to climb, and you're breathing this hard in the first half an hour. You know, it's not good, I don't think, to put yourself under that much stress so early. The 4th point I wrote down was trust your strategy. And this is where it takes a lot of discipline, because you have to allow people to go streaming past you and knowing that if you get it right, then you'll see them again later on in the race. And then the final one is to enjoy that feeling of catching people over the second half of the race. If you've done it right and you've started steady and you looked after yourself, then you will be catching people. You'll still be slowing down, but you'll be slowing down less than others. And so it's a great feeling when you feel as though you're finding things hard, that you're actually catching people and going past them. So that would be my top 5 tips to finish well.
Wow, John, you sound like a coach with all that information. I might be employing you for my next race. And as you were talking, it was so funny because I wrote down discipline, and then you started talking about discipline. And I think this is where you've learned this. I was going to say old, you're wise. You are wise now, a wise ultra runner. But the men are so bad at this. I've done so many, just like you said, and we've been going up the first hill and I'm sort of trotting along and there's guys going, and you think, oh, this isn't going to go to a happy place. Or so yeah, discipline. Everything you say, I totally agree with that discipline in that first half of the race, first 3/4 of the race. And I always say to people, patience as well. It's so hard because also you're going so slow. You want to get that first bit of the race done, don't you? You sort of like, I just want to get that first half done and be in the depths of the race. I don't want to be tootling around. But as you've shown, and there's some excellent graphs you've provided in your blog, which show that it works. It works if you are patient and disciplined in that first half of the race. And I think it's down to a lot of things. It's down to your experience that you're able to do this and trust the process that you've planned. But also, if you're going slower, you can eat and drink. You can absorb that fuel and you're not burning through your blood glucose which if you're out of breath, this is a top tip, if you're out of breath in that first 90 minutes, you've got about 90 minutes of blood glucose in your body if you've eaten well the day before. So often if we go for a morning run, you'll know you can run for about 90 minutes without breakfast and then you start feeling hungry, and you've run out of your blood glucose. But if you run really hard to start off with, you're burning through that blood glucose. So then you're going to have to go into your reserves much quicker. So the way that you've been doing it the past sort of couple of years, would it be? You're a shining example to the ultra world. And I would say a lot of people should take on board that advice, especially as we go back to racing. And we haven't raced for a long time and everybody's super excited to be on that start line. But I think what we've seen is now with staggered starts, people are going off a bit slower and being a little bit more conservative because you haven't got that first 10 miles of testosterone, ego-filled sweat fest.
So we thought for this week we'd have a competition again, and I'd love to hear other people's stories. I think one of the reasons I love doing these podcasts is interviewing people and talking to people and hearing people's stories. So for this week, we're going to have a little competition and we're going to ask people to share their stories of how their race have gone. We'd love to hear those who got it right in the sense of starting comfortably and finishing really well and how that makes them feel. But we'd also quite like to hear the stories of where you got it wrong. And if I had time, I could share you some of those as well, where I've gone off far too quickly and I've hung on.
I mean, to be fair, probably 80% of the races I've done it wrong and gone off too fast and then grovelled in home, but managed to get a big enough deficit that my slowing down has been okay. But yeah, most of us have got it wrong more than we've got it right, I'm sure.
Yeah. So again, our sponsors, Cheer Charge, are providing a starter pack of their favorite bars, Cheer Charge bars. So Eddie will put that on our Facebook page, which we've got over 1,000 people now on our Facebook page. So thank you for those that have joined. And
thanks, Mum. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, all our friends. And so basically, that'll be on there. And if you want to share your stories, and we'll pick the best one for a prize for next week. Okay, we're going to move on now to the main part of this podcast, which is the Autumn 100. Now, this is a race I've not done, but you have, Eddie. So maybe tell us just a little bit about the Autumn 100 and the route. 'Cause it's quite an interesting route, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant. If you're looking to do a first 100, this is the race for you. It starts in Goring, which is about an hour outside of London, in a village hall. And then you do 4 spurs of they're slightly varying in length, but they're about 25 miles each. So you run out 12 miles, 12 and a half miles, and then you turn around and you run back again. 2 spurs are on the Thames Path, so they're quite flat, and at this time of year they're very muddy. And then 2 spurs are on the Ridgeway, which is much more, it's sort of like it's much more like the South Downs Way, John. It's a chalk track and much more hilly, and you tend to run out, so you run up and then you turn around and then you've got a lovely downhill back. It's brilliant race because not only are you always got checkpoints, so you've got these regular checkpoints because it's easily accessible. They're not too far apart, but you see the field, which is so rare in 100. You see the same people all the time because you're doing this out and back. So it's great because often when people make their debuts at ultra running, you don't realize how long you're going to be by yourself and you're not going to see people. But on this race, you pass people all the time and you pass the same people. And Zoe really took, I think she called him smug, the smug wave that Mark, who won it, kept giving her. And especially when you see people coming back to finish and you still got a good grind, a good 20 miles still to go. But yeah, it's a great race, really well organized, and I'd recommend it for a first 100.
Yeah.
Entries open quite soon.
So it means as well, Eddie, that there's a central basis there, so you can have a bag, can you, that you come back to?
So there's no crew. You don't have any crew. You don't need them at all. So you have your bag in this village hall, and after each of these 4 spurs, it's like a cross. After each of the spurs, you run into the village hall. They have your bag. Centurion, you're going to love it. It's immaculate, the organization. Someone will be ready with your bag, and there'll be somebody in the hall. I did it with nobody, that will help you, and you can, you can, not probably right now, you have to do it by yourself, but normally, rummage through your bag, re-put. So it's great because you can take lots of different layers and things, and all sorts of different things you might want in your bag. So you always go back. The hard thing is, though, then of course, is that you're going back to this lovely warm village hall and you've got to get yourself back out of it again. So you've got to make that pretty slick, because you can smell the Drew's dad cooks up the hot dogs for the finishers, and you get in and you're like, oh, I could just. So I think there was quite a high DNF rate this year. But I had a great time. I interviewed Zoe and Mark, who were the winners, and really interesting to hear about how their training. I talked about their training going into the race and the sort of how they mentally coped with whether they didn't know if the race was going to happen or not, and then how the race panned out and their sort of plans for the future. Neither of them I knew before, so it was really great getting to know them. And I think everybody will really enjoy this. They're just so normal, but they both ran stonkingly fast times, and we look forward to following them in future episodes. I am very lucky this week to have been allowed by John to interview the winners of Centurion Autumn 100. Welcome, Zoe and Mark, to the podcast.
Hi, Eddie.
Hi.
Hey, hi.
You both look very fresh, not too tired. We are recording this at 8 o'clock, 10 past 8 it is now, so I'm aware it's getting near your bedtime. So I was going to start with you, Mark. Firstly, congratulations. Am I right in saying that's your first 100?
It was, yes.
So could you tell us first of all about the conditions at the weekend, and then just tell us how you found that first 100? Was it what you dreamed of?
So fortunately, Saturday morning was quite a clear, lovely morning, and I remember the sunrise just after the start was amazing.
Did you start super early?
Super early, yeah. So they were asking people, the quicker people, to go off between 6:30 and 7 a.m. So I was probably, 7th or 8th to go off, about 6:45, and it was a really clear skies, no real wind at that point, and it was really runnable. The first spur is along the towpath, so really good running, and just tried to find my rhythm and sort of get into the race. I quite enjoy the flatter ground. Got a bit of a marathon sort of background.
You're going to be too modest to say, but your 2:31 PB, was that at London? Yeah. Okay. So you can move. You can move a little.
Yeah. It was really good early on, and I think we got to Goring after 25 miles, and the front three came in all together, which was really exciting. Ed and John and myself were all out within about a minute of each other. So it was brilliant. And Yeah, and then second leg, you're on the ridgeway, so a few more hills, rolling hills, but not too taxing. Bit slippy underfoot in places. And then the third spur is a bit more hilly, and by then the wind had really come up. It's a bit exposed on the ridgeline to Chain Hill.
Yeah.
And I put my earpiece in and put some music on, and it was into the wind for a couple of hours, and mostly uphill. So that was the bit just to get your head down and get through.
Is that, how far have you run before? You've done a couple of Centurion 50s. Is that your furthest that you've
Yes,
run?
I've done a handful of 50s and a couple of multi-stage races. Dragon's Back last year, but never 100 in one day. Yeah, never 100 in one go. So
that third spur, as you were going out, what were you thinking? That sort of, okay, I've got another 25 miles to go.
Yeah, the one rule I had from the outset was don't go too fast at the beginning. And I came in after the second leg, looked at my watch and thought, oh God, I've gone a bit quick. Yeah, I just tried to sort of relax a bit more and kind of enjoy it, but just take it relatively comfortably. So yeah, you're never really sure, are you? Because you don't, particularly when you're out the front, you don't know where everyone is, and you're trying not to get lost, and there's so much to think about. So and nutrition as well, because I hadn't done 100 miles in a day before. I was thinking, right, well, I need to concentrate on what I'm taking on, food and water wise. So yeah.
And Zoe, it's your third 100 miler, but the first one you've done, which is relatively flat, quite a lot of running from you've done TDS and Lakeland, your other two.
Yeah, so my first ever one was the Lakeland 100, 105 that they don't tell you till you do it.
Bitter about that.
Yeah, so the Lakeland 100 and then the TDS. So the crazy bit was the difference in how much running versus obviously in the other two is a lot of hiking. You're hiking up mountains in the lakes and Mont Blanc. It's sort of, whereas this was, well, there was no walking until the fourth spur when things slow down quite a lot. But until that point, it was just running, and I've never done a race of that distance where I know that sounds crazy, but all you're doing is running. So it was very different in that way, yeah.
So did you you're also a stinking fast marathon runner as well. So did you approach your training for this as like a marathon? Because knowing that, it was going to be sort of a lot more running than the previous 200s that you've done.
If I'm honest, yeah, I did quite a lot. So I did quite a lot of tempo running for it, knowing exactly that it was obviously a lot flatter. I knew it was hilly, but like Mark said, it's undulating, so it's all runnable. It's just, so it was knowing it was runnable. It was about being able to hold the strong pace for length of time. But yeah, I don't think anything quite prepares you for it. But a great course, and yeah, all really runnable, which was great, if I'm honest.
So Mark, is it your first 100? Did you have any lows that people talk about it before you do 100, don't you? That you're going to have massive highs and massive lows. Did you have any of those real lows that you had to work through? Any nutrition or anything like that?
Definitely that spur 3, because you're having not done 100, that's kind of into the unknown a bit at that point. My stomach was okay, but I wasn't probably eating as much as I had been before that. And the wind was really strong into the face. And of course, it's quite lonely up the front on that ridge.
It's just it's sort of just getting dark, isn't it? And it's
just getting dark. You can see the dark clouds coming in. And they did say we might get rain later in the day. And it just as I was sort of finishing the last 5-10 miles of spur 3, it did start to rain, and it probably rained for an hour and a half or so, as I was sort of coming in from leg 3 and then out on leg 4. Yeah, so that was the bit to get through, and then of course I met my pacer, which cheered me up no end. So yeah.
That was going to be my next question, was did you have a pacer, and how did they sort of help you? So Mark, you carry on and tell me about who your pacer was and how they helped you, because they're a deal breaker really, aren't they?
Yeah, I was very lucky. A very, very good friend of mine, and sort of running buddy, was my pacer. He's another Mark Shannon, who's done some Centurion stuff. And he's also done UTMB, so he knows what's required really. Yeah. And he was excellent. He was really good. Just on leg 4. Just on leg 4, yeah. So it was the dark section. We started off in the rain, so a bit miserable to start with, but nice to see him and sort of have someone to chat to for a while. And yeah, just amazing to just keep you going, really.
And open gates.
Yeah, he did. It was amazing.
What about you, Zoe? Did you have a pacer, Zoe?
Yeah, I had a pacer. A friend Dave, who was coming. He came from London. Originally my husband was meant to do it. But I'm from up north, where there's all sorts of lockdowns and things going on. And I actually live on the Welsh-English border. So in order to do this race, I actually left home a week before the race to escape lockdown.
I love this commitment.
So I left home so that I wasn't breaking the Welsh rules, because you're not allowed to travel for holiday or sport under Welsh rules. So I went and formed a household with my dad, who lives on his own in England, lived with him for a week, and then travelled from there to my race. So my husband couldn't come with me anyway, because he was stuck in the Welsh rules. So I was going to the race on my own, and then a good friend Dave was like, I'll come and pace you. So he drove up from London, because obviously they're not in restrictions down south. So he came up and did the last leg with me, which was just amazing. I've never had a pacer before, and the difference is just, I just knew for that whole third leg, when I got to the end of it, there was a friend waiting. So it just spurred you on for that whole third leg, that someone was waiting for you.
And especially as it's quite a large section, is really dark, that fourth section, isn't it? Until you get to sort of the Reading lights. It's really dark, so an extra head torch, and it's easy to sort of lose the momentum, because you're tired, you can't tell where you are, and you're sort of going up and down in those woods, and just having somebody to keep you going, especially an experienced runner that knows, and a friend. So I quite would like to focus on this last leg now, because John is talking this week about fast finishing and finishing strong, and I had a look at your splits for the end, and Zoe, you had a bit of a shocker on the way out, but you actually came back really strong, and you actually came back, if you sort of compare your splits to Mark, you were actually faster, not on the time, but actually the difference in the time, you were actually running really strong at the end. Mark, you looked like you had a little fade maybe, and then you stormed the last bit, obviously smelling the bacon sandwiches. So can you sort of just talk me through, maybe Zoe first for this one, the sort of the last couple of hours on the race, how you found it and how you dug really deep? Because I think a lot of people that are listening to this, your speed over that 100 is sort of incomprehensible to them in some ways. And so it's really interesting to hear like how people who are as fast as you keep that momentum going, because a lot of people, it's those last bits where it really is a bit of a car crash. So how did you, Zoe, keep that momentum going and then come back with a really good sort of last 10K?
So I think that leg 4 for me, like I picked up my pacer, Dave, and it was great to run out with him, but I was just genuinely I was feeling just tired. Like I was like, I am tired. I said to Dave, I was like, I'm really tired. Like as in, you could just close your eyes and go to sleep. But obviously, and I go to bed quite early. So when it started to get into like 10 o'clock, I was like, I'm just genuinely tired. But so I found that leg hard, and you get to that first checkpoint at Pangbourne, and it's obviously only like 4 miles into that second leg. Whereas when they were that halfway, I don't know, mentally it was just better. But 4 miles, knowing you had 8.5 miles to go, was mentally really tough, really tough. I also have a bit of a hip injury that it's one of those that you just deal with. It's okay, I can run with it, but it flares up now and again, and it definitely flares up at the end of long races. So it just meant I was running, but I was having to put some little walks in. And that's where, you get tired and stuff. And it was where Dave was like, have you taken any paracetamol? And I was like, no. He was like, well, why don't you take some painkillers? And I was like, oh my God, yes. So that's where the drugs came out. And then he popped the dynamite, as he called it, which was a can of Red Bull.
Oh, didn't know
so
what you were saying.
The paracetamol, funnily enough, it worked quite well for the leg back.
This is not a medical advisory.
So yeah, the paracetamol and the Red Bull works for the last leg back. But I think also you get to that turnaround point in Reading, and it's such a mental boost. You literally it's 12.5 miles, but the boost in you is like, I'm running home now. This is it. Whatever's in this tank is I'm spending it because I've just got to get home. So
and you saw Mark. So whereabouts were you when you passed, knowing Mark was going to the finish, the little blighter, and you still had a bit more to run?
Yeah, still had quite a long way. So what were we out? I'd probably done maybe 2 miles out of Pangbourne. Do you reckon it was, Mark, roughly? I don't.
Yeah, it was on the
that
fields.
muddy, slippy section.
Yeah.
So I was just jealous of him, basically, knowing he was in Smug Club, going the other way, going, I so wish I was him.
Swap numbers.
Yeah.
He was motoring though.
I was just going to say, was he flying back the other way? And Mark, talk me through your sort of that last leg for you.
The first bit was really good because you just met your pacer, and we were just having a friendly conversation as we were running. We run together quite a lot anyway, and it was really nice. But then, that bit from Pangbourne to Reading, that 8 miles, it's really dark there, as you say, and you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. And it's a long, long stretch. And you're looking out for the lights of Reading the whole time. Where is it? But then, what did I have when I got there? I had crisps, and that seemed to fuel me to the end. And as you say, once you turn round, that gives you an extra bit of energy, knowing that you're heading for home by then. And I didn't want to stop.
No, do you think on reflection now, that last leg, could you run it better if you did it again?
I don't know, because there's so many variables, isn't there, at that point? I'm not sure. And there's a few little hills there as well, that first part, which coming back, I had to walk. So, I don't know. I know I went quick in the first half, so maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
You held it together. So talking about that sort of the strength endurance that you both have, I've had a bit of a Strava stalk of both of you and of your training over the sort of like past 6 months, but perhaps you could explain to us a little bit more about what your sort of 100-mile training looked like going into this race, because it's not obviously been a normal training block for anybody doing the race, but what did you do that sort of you think made that race so successful? How did you approach it? Because I know, like, I'm training for the South Downs Way 100, and a little bit of me sometimes has found it a little bit hard to stay focused because I think, is it going to be cancelled? Is it, I could just take this one easy. I could just say it was easy. So Zoe, can I start with you? How did your training block look? Any nuggets, pearls of wisdom?
I don't know about pearls of wisdom, but I'd agree with you in the fact that, to be honest, I've pretty much all year I've just been going, well, it's going to be cancelled. But what I did do was look at the year in another way and just went, well, what I'm going to do is fill it with adventures, all training. But I was like, so obviously with lockdown and stuff, and I love to travel, but we haven't been able to travel. So I did things that I sort of always had said, I'd love to do that. For example, I live just on the outskirts of Chester, and I spend a lot of time in North Wales on the coast. So I was like, I'm going to run from England to the coast in Abersock. that's what I want to do. So I decided, I picked a weekend. I ran 50 miles a day over 2 days over the mountains, and it was just an adventure. But my whole summer was about what adventures can I do that will be training for the race. And I looked at it that if the race never happened, I'd still love the summer of training. And that's how I approached it, because I never knew, like you, if the race was ever going to happen. So I just wanted to know, I look back and go, well, I had a great summer trying anyway. So that was sort of my approach to it.
I love that. You've made me feel so much better if I can't get to my race, because I've done a lot of the same thing. I've done stuff that I'd never normally do, because I'm like, well, I might as well, because I wouldn't normally put this in a training block. But perhaps actually, when we look back on it, it kind of works. That sort of like organic enjoyment rather than the focus that sometimes you put. Mark, you're nodding your head. Did you do the same sort of thing? Or you're going to tell us you went to the track 3 times a week?
It was a real roller coaster, the whole lockdown period. And early on, I kind of lost my running mojo quite heavily, because there was no focus. There was no races were being postponed or cancelled. And, with a busy family life, I thought, well, if there's nothing on, then, I'll just enjoy more time with the children and just take it a bit more easy. And then a couple of friends, very good runners, wanted to do a Paddy Buckley, which is the big Welsh round, which is something I would have never have really considered. But because all the other races were being canned, and it's something that we could choose to do whenever we wanted to, I ended up going along for that and training for that. So I had to do some quite heavy hill training.
How did you do that?
Kind of June, July time. Yeah, I know. I live on the edge of the Chiltern Hills.
Okay.
Just at the other end, kind of Tring, Berkhamsted way. And although they're not huge hills, I had to sort of hunt down the hills, and I used Ivinghoe Beacon as a bit of a hill training area. It's not a massive hill, but it's something. And so I did that first weekend of August. Didn't quite get round, but I think that gave me a lot of strength. And then, having come out of sort of a recovery from that, I then had sort of 6 weeks to train for the 8 Ultra 100. So I guess I had a good base. And then for me, really, it's just consistency of running. So just not loads and loads of huge runs, but just running most days. Just putting the time in, really.
I've got a question to ask you, Mark, because North Downs Way 50 in 2016, you finished in 7 hours 27. Are you writing that? Yeah. And then by 2018, South Downs Way 50, you were 6 hours 58, which different races, very different courses. But that's a great time. And I feel that's a huge improvement on those times over that sort of couple of years. What did you do in those couple of years? Or as you said, is it just running consistency?
Running consistency. I joined a running club. Probably was doing more speed work on the track, more tempo stuff. My marathon PB was coming down during those years.
Okay, so were you still marathon racing?
Yeah. I was. Yeah. So I think just more consistent running and more focused sessions, I think. Yeah.
It's amazing. Are 100 milers in your future now, Mark? That you
James asked me that question after.
I bet he did. He was like, "Sign you up."
And at the time, I said definitely not. But I don't know. I'm just hoping 2021 there's a lot more races on, and we can pick and choose a bit more. But definitely definitely ultras. I love them. It's particularly the runnable ones. So yeah, I think I will do them do up to hundreds again. But I also like the fast.
Yeah,
the fast.
I totally get that. I totally get that.
I'd love to break the 2:30 marathon at some point. So that's on the agenda as well.
God, it's exciting. What about you, Zoe? Having gone from some hilly epic 105 milers to now this runnable, what's in your future? What sort of like, which did you love more and which one can you see yourself doing? What's the plans?
To be honest, I love them both. I don't think you'd sort of be like, oh, that's the way I want to go. I'm a bit like Mark. I still have some unfinished business for the marathon. So
do you? So have I said that your PB is at 2:51? Your marathon PB?
Yeah, so there's unfinished business there.
There? What's the goal? What's the dream?
It's the under 250, isn't it? That's the goal.
240 something.
So that was the goal for London. The goal for London, that was London this year, but London got cancelled. So in spring, I was meant to do London and then take the marathon training from London to go into the autumn 100 training. That was sort of my plan. And I did with the training, but obviously the race never happened for the marathon, unfortunately. But future-wise, so I just heard Mark say before that he did the Dragon's Back last year. Well, I've entered it for next year, so that's
amazing.
Oh my goodness, we need a whole other Zoom meeting for that then.
Amazing.
So yeah, I'm prepared for hell for 6 days on that one, I think.
And it's just been lengthened by a day too, hasn't it?
Yeah, because that's what you need, more running at the end.
Have you done a multi-day before, Zoe?
No, I've not done a multi-day, and I don't do camping, so it's going to be a new experience all round.
Mark's eyes have just sort of like widened, and he's just nodded.
Yeah.
You'll love it. You'll love it.
I think with your skill repertoire of your speed, your strength, but you've got real ability in the hills as well, and you've got access to train in the hills, whatever happens. I think that's a really exciting prospect, and you just have got to embrace, I wouldn't worry about the running, you just got to embrace the tent and sharing a tent with 8 other smelly people.
I just think with all ultra marathons, whether they are, the faster routes, the mountain, you have to look at it you have to look at them as an adventure. You have no idea what's going to happen on that day. You have a plan, and your plan is to, you're going to execute that plan. But often you have to have an A, B, and C plan because it all changes. So at the weekend, I stood on that start line going, today's just about having fun. You're here to race, of course, we're there to race, without a doubt. But you are there to have fun. Like it's 100 miles. You've got to enjoy it and look at the adventure of it, because every single 100-mile race is so different. And yeah, you just got to, try and enjoy it anyway.
enjoy as much as you can. I was going to ask you, as sort of our closing of our conversation, was to say, what would you say to somebody who was standing on the start line of their first 100-miler, having just done yours, Mark, and Zoe, having just done your sort of first fastest one, you're standing next to a newbie who's just about to start. What would you say to them, Mark, as sort of something that you've learned, some sage advice?
I would say, don't go off too fast. Enjoy it, because there's quite often people just put their head down and don't look around, and there's often some amazing scenery, and the camaraderie is amazing, particularly the Centurion races. So yeah, just go out and enjoy it, really, and make sure you eat lots from the start. I would say, yeah, that's one thing I try to do. On leg one, I think it paid off, mid race. So, did
you take your own food, or did you eat a lot from the checkpoints?
A bit of both. I was trying to limit my time in the checkpoints, so I would sort of fill up the water or tailwind, and then grab some chocolate and fruit. But I had snacks on me as well. So a bit of both, yeah. And
what about you, Zoe? You've just given us really good advice, so feel free to repeat that if you want. What would you say to that newbie? And now you're an accomplished 3 times finisher of 100 milers. You're a pro.
I think my advice is always, if you say someone, is believe in your training. Because if you've done the training, you are prepared for it. If you haven't done the training, that's a whole different thing.
Let's approach it differently.
Yeah, if you've put the effort in and you've done the training, just believe in it. And then, like Mark's saying, then then the elements that are really important is your nutrition. Don't go off too hard, because they are controllable on the day. Only you can mess those things up. If you don't eat enough and you run off too fast, well, you've messed that up. You didn't have to. So believe in your training, have a plan, and stick to it. And I think if you do that, then hopefully, fingers crossed, it should work out.
Well, I just want to say, you didn't bring your Centurion trophies on screen, which I'm a bit disappointed about. I was hoping you might have them there. But a huge well done. I'm so proud of both of you for pulling out real elite level performances. Mark on your first 100 and Zoe on a really fast time on a tricky course. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast when you probably just want to go to bed. But you will have inspired a lot of people, not only who saw you out there, the out and backs in waving and looking so serene and in control, but also people listening to this, that they don't get a chance to sort of hear how the race went from the different ends of the field. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and we look forward to Zoe seeing you. We will be following you. Maybe we'll do a daily podcast from the Dragon's Back, gossip from Tent 21, and Mark, hopefully see you get that to 2:27 marathon and on a Centurion start line again, if that's 100 or a 50. No doubt we'll see you with many of those trophies again. So thank you so much. Go to bed now.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks.
I hope you really enjoyed that interview that Eddie did with Mark and Zoe. Just one little thing at the beginning there, Eddie. You seem to give the impression that I don't let you do interviews.
Well, I feel like I'm slowly being allowed off the leash with some strict instructions. I'm like a puppy, and you're slowly trusting me a little bit more with a few more interviews, with some strict guidelines and time limits.
Yeah. Well, I must admit, the first one you did in episode 1, it was, I said 20 minutes and it was an hour.
You're never going to get over it.
No.
Let it go, John.
No, it was great. I thought you interviewed them really well and brought out lots of really good things there. And as you said, they both came across as very normal people who are obviously talented athletes. So it was great to learn from them. And one of the things that we want to do as well with these podcasts is not just interview the winners, but also people down the field. And the next interview we've got is with Debra and Lee. And I must admit, I looked through the results and I wanted to find 2 people who had started comfortably and finished well. And both these did that. And it was lovely just to chat to them. And again, this lasts just over 20 minutes. And this is Lee and Debra talking about their Autumn 100 race. Okay, for this part of our Run to the Hills podcast, we've got 2 runners who completed the Autumn 100. We've got Lee Dunstall and Debra Bourne. And thank you very much, guys, for coming on our show tonight. And we wanted just to get a feel of how the race went. But maybe to start with, you could just introduce yourself and maybe tell us how you're feeling 3 or 4 days after the race. Debra, how are you?
Hi, John. I'm feeling fine, actually. I had a nice, I slept most of the rest of Sunday, had a really lazy day, not moving a lot on Monday, nice little 30 minutes gently yesterday, and led a club run, but with the slowest group this evening. And yeah, the legs were feeling really fine this evening. So I'm looking forward to really getting going again now.
Yeah, not too bad. Back to work on Monday, teaching. Done a little bit of cycling to work here and there, walking on my feet, raring to actually run tomorrow night, hopefully. But no issues. Yeah, good, thanks.
So Lee, I wanted to start because you're attempting the Grand Slam, is that right?
Yep.
Yep. So you've already done 2 races. You've done the North Downs Way 100, and then 4 weeks later, the Thames Path. And then 5 weeks later, you've had the Autumn 100. So just tell us a little bit about your preparation for this one. How was the recovery after those 2? Because they are quite close together. And how are you feeling going into this year's race, the one we've just done?
Well, the first 2 races have been totally different. So the North Downs Way 100 was extremely hot, and I do struggle in the heat. So after then, I just sort of let my body just recover, just done gentle jogs. The same with the Thames Path. I struggled because it's completely flat, because I live in Eastbourne where it's nice and hilly, and my legs are just not used to that flat terrain. So since the Thames Path, I've just been enjoying my running. So I'm quite lucky with recovery. My friends, or all my ultra runner friends, get quite jealous of how I recover so quickly. So normally within the first couple of days, I go out for a run with my partner, and we just do like easy half an hour, not even looking at the watch, just enjoy it. But one of the biggest things is we live near the beach, and when it's low tide, I do barefoot running. And I really, really enjoy it, just getting back to nature. Just getting that connection, just not having the watch on, and just enjoying it, watching the sunrise, sunsets, and just spending time with my girlfriend, Rebecca. And I just find that really helps. Also do a bit of sea swimming, quite enjoy that for recovery, takes the pressure off and uses different muscles, and a bit of cycling. But I don't put any pressure on myself, I just try and enjoy it. I know other people that have done the double Grand Slam, and they've sort of like said they run and they just rest, and that's what I've listened to. I don't have a running plan, I listen to my body, and I've been quite fortunate.
And for Deborah, how was your preparation? Was this your main goal for this year, the Autumn 100, or have you done several races this year?
This year hasn't turned out quite as it was intended. My goals for this year were to get sub 340, maybe sub 330 on a marathon, sub 10 hours at Comrades, which of course didn't happen, and to run a 100 in under 24. So Comrades obviously didn't happen, and with all the Centurion Ultras and some other races I've got ending up all in the last 5 months of the year, trying to fit in a fast marathon at some point during that seems unlikely. So that really left the 100 as the one to go for. And I did North Downs Way 100, and that went really well. I think I coped better than many people with the heat. And I'm really pleased with where I came in the field and stuff. But I didn't manage that sub 24 that I've been wanting to. So the Autumn 100, therefore, was my next chance for that. And I've been getting coaching since December with Centurion. So I'm signed up with Neil Bryant. And so my preparation, he's been setting me all my goals for all my runs throughout this year. And it's been a bit hard accepting that someone else was setting stuff for me. Not being in control was difficult. But yeah, since North Downs Way 100, and then I've had Chiltern Wonderland 50 and a 50k since then. But other than that, yeah, I've been preparing for this. So
yeah, oh, well done. I didn't realise you'd done the North Downs Way as well. So it was just the Thames Path that you missed out on, was it?
Yeah, most of it. I double marked from Windsor to Henley.
Okay.
So I got to do a little bit of the Thames Path.
Right. Excellent. Now, I must admit, guys, the reason one of the reasons I invited you two on was that I looked through all the results from the field, and I was looking, because we do a top tip each week. Edwina and myself, we chat about different things in the podcast, and this week we're going to talk about finishing well. And personally, I feel to finish well, you need to start sensibly. And I always think it's quite interesting to look at someone's splits and their positions at the start and the finish. And Lee, you finished in 22 hours, 40 minutes and 46. And you were 146th at the first checkpoint. And then you finished in 66th place. So it looked as though that you started sensibly and finished well. And Deborah, you finished in 23 hours, 08:38. And again, you went from 118th at the first checkpoint down to 77th. So I'm intrigued to know whether my theory of how you started and how you finished was the reality. So maybe Lee, you could start and just tell us a little bit about your race and whether you did start sensibly and whether you finished well with a smile on your face.
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange one because of the Thames Park and the North Downs, because it's a rolling start with Centurion, I've been going maybe too quick. I've learned from a couple of years ago to start off slow and start maybe at the back of the pack and then sort of like go past people. And as you go past people, you get that encouragement, and that's, it just gives you that little bit of a high going past people. But the first two races, I just didn't do it. I saw everyone going off too quick. I didn't even look at my watch. My game plan went out, and I just got caught up in the hype of it. So this race here, I decided to start a little bit later. And I listened to my body a hell of a lot more this time and not go too fast. And I just really got in touch with myself. I think the other thing that really helped with this race was that you're pretty much only 6 miles away from every aid station. So that allowed me to fuel properly. I made sure my bottles were full at every aid station, make sure I had, enough food. And from there, I just listened to my body. And I think where I really made the ground was actually on leg 3, when I was up on the Downs or the Ridgeway, and it felt like home a little bit on the South Downs Way for me. And as soon as I got on top of those hills, I had a big smile on my face, and I was just enjoying it. And look, it was clear sky, most of it, seeing the stars, and I felt really strong on there, just going past people, and talking to them, encouraging them. I just really, really enjoyed it.
I must admit, Lee, I looked at your splits, and you went, I think it must have been the one, you went from 126th to 86th in one leg. So it must have been that one, because when you were flying past people. I don't think I really walked too much of that leg. I remember just coming out Gory with a sandwich in my hand and running with it and just talking to people while they're walking, and just kept on flying. And the other good thing is that I knew that when I get to mile 75, I can have my pacer, and that was my girlfriend, which has never paced me. And basically, I wasn't aiming for a sub 24. I just wanted to get round. I just want to get that Grand Slam buckle. That's the bigger picture. But as soon as I got into Gory and I looked at her, I said, "You've got 7.5 hours to get me in, babe." And I said, "No pressure." And she'd done it in 6:06. And the last mile, she absolutely beasted me for the fastest mile to the finish line. But I think it was just being relaxed, the temperature was really good for me. It wasn't too warm. I was fueling properly. I was enjoying myself. And I didn't go too hard at the beginning. I think that was the main thing, that I didn't see it as a race, I saw it as a run. And then all of a sudden, just going past people, it just encourages yourself. Yeah. I don't think many people went past me on leg 4 at all. I don't think anyone did, to be honest. Yeah. Well, congratulations. And I do think that attitude of being positive and just learning from the first ones, it obviously paid off for you. So well done. Yeah. How about you, Deborah?
You.
Is my theory work with you as well?
Yes and no. I did a recent 50k with the Tolkien run with Saxons, Vikings and Normans, and that one I really consciously started off slowly and worked up and finished really, really strongly and fast, and that felt amazing. Organising that for a 100 is a bit harder, so Neil had given me specific instructions to take it easy on the first leg and to use it for practicing fueling properly. I was pretty much carrying all my own food because I'm basically vegan and wasn't sure. I didn't want to be faffing around at the aid stations working out what I could eat and what I couldn't. So other than the fruit, I was carrying my own stuff. And so the first leg I used to get into a rhythm for eating and drinking. So dropping to a walk for that to break it up. It would be very easy to just go too fast on that because it's just flat. Leg 2 I really enjoyed. I like the terrain on that. I like a bit more variety, like Lee was saying. So I really enjoyed leg 2. I know it in the other direction. I've done the Ridgeway 86 a couple of times. I've never run it, and of course I ran Devil's Dyke and that on Chiltern Wonderland, so I've done parts of that 3 times. But I'd never run it in the eastward direction, so that was kind of fun. And yeah, there were lots of red kites up, and I always enjoy watching those. And then of course the rain started, it was less fun, but you know, initially that wasn't too bad, and I thoroughly enjoyed leg 2 and probably went faster than I should have done because I was enjoying it so much. But that's not a bad thing to be enjoying it. Leg 3, the outward was the route that I knew because I've done it on the Ridgeway, and it was kind of fun to see it in daylight for a change, at least at the beginning. And yeah, I'd realised at the end of leg 2, or as I was just setting out for leg 3, that I'd done the first half in under 10 hours, which should give me plenty of time, 14 hours, to do the second half and come in sub 24, that was my goal. So leg 3 just got really slippery for me. I was in decent trail shoes, so not so bad compared to some of the people, but still, it took a bit more out of you, I felt, because you were having to really work on keeping your balance and working out the right track to take, and trying to work out which of the multiple ridges and furrows was going to be the best one to run in for the next few hundred yards, and so on. And I found I was really pulled between, on the one hand, I knew that going slowly was more sensible to leave more energy for leg 4, and on the other, there's that you want a buffer, you know? I mean, even you know that running more evenly is more sensible, a part of you wants that buffer. So yeah, so I pushed on, but I tried not to push on too much through legs 1, 2 and 3, so that I would have something left for leg 4. And then I think I actually got into what I would call mental and neurological, neuromuscular fatigue rather than muscular, because my legs were okay. They weren't stiff, they weren't sore, but they didn't want to run. So persuading myself to keep running got harder and harder. So I had to go for a run-walk schedule. So it was sort of, okay, if I manage 100 strides with each leg, then I can have a walking break. And if I don't manage 100, then I've got to have a shorter walking break. So then maybe, you know, if I've only managed 20, then I only get 20 strides walking break, and then I'll go again. If I've got 100, I can have 50 or 100 strides walking. But I kept that up, so I kept on going, run, walk, run, walk, run, walk for the whole of that. And I have to say, the first half out to Reading seemed to take just forever. And I've been warned that when you got to the Welcome to Reading sign, it was still 6 miles to go, but it felt like I'd already done 8 or 10 miles at that point. So I couldn't kind of believe it was still 6 miles to go, and it was. And mentally, the second half, the return half, was easier because I really knew how far I had to go. And I was still walking, but I was, you know, keeping that rhythm. And then I fell in with some other guys at the end who were trying for the sub 24 and had less time in hand than I did, but we kind of egged each other on, and finished reasonably strongly at the end. So yeah, there were people I was playing leapfrog with, some of whom I realised gradually were getting ahead of me, and others who perhaps were drifting behind me. It's kind of hard to tell on that, on the staggered start, how you're doing. You lose track of people at checkpoints, so you don't know if you're not with someone anymore. You don't know if it's because you've taken longer to checkpoint or they have, and so it's often unclear whether someone's ahead of you or behind you now, unless you spot them on the way in, the way out.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I think it's interesting just listen to your story there. And I think you obviously went by feel as well. And when you were feeling good, you pushed a bit and you were well under your goal, your 24-hour goal. You had 52 minutes to spare. So that's really well done. So well done to both of you. And I think there's lessons there for all of us to learn, just the way that you started and the way that you looked after yourselves and finished well. So well done. Just got one more question for you. The first one for Lee. Obviously, you're doing the South Downs Way as well, are you?
Yeah.
You're going to complete the Grand Slam. So what are your plans over these next 3.5 weeks before the race, the last race?
I haven't planned anything, to be totally honest with you. In Eastbourne, we've got the Beachy Half Marathon, which my girlfriend's doing. The following week, we've got the Beachy Head 10K, which my little sister's doing, and it's the same day as the South Downs 50, where I've got quite a lot of friends from Eastbourne doing it, running from the other side of Worthing back to Eastbourne. So I'm pretty much going to go and watch and support. And again, just listen to the body. Just run when I've got itchy feet, when I need to go out there and just hit the pavement or hit the woods or whatever. That there's no plan. I'm a little bit cautious that I've come this far, that I want to bubble wrap myself a little bit, knowing that within 3.5 weeks I'm going to be finishing my hometown. Hopefully my family are going to be at the finish. With this COVID, it's actually worked out really well for me, knowing that I'm going to be finishing on the track. My grandparents live I have to run past my grandparents' house actually to finish on the track, so I can knock on their door, give them a social distance hug, hopefully, grab a beer, and finish the last mile with a beer in hand. That's the aim. I've already got it in my head. That's how I'm going to do it. But for running, I used to do Ironman a couple of years ago, and I always got scared a couple of weeks beforehand, falling off the bike or having an accident. And I'm a little bit like that at the moment. I've come this far that I just start, I've done 75% of it. One more 100 miles. Yeah, bubble wrap me a little bit. I've still got work to do, teaching. So that's going to take me, it takes up a lot of time. But there's again, it's just going by feel and just making sure. I've got 3 aims. One is to make sure I get to the start line. One is to finish it. And the third one would be lovely to get under 24 again. But the main aim really is to get that Grand Slam and I think there's only 17 now that are left.
Excellent. We wish you all the best for that, and make sure you keep that bubble wrap for the next few weeks. Yeah,
definitely.
Well done.
Cheers.
Yeah. And how about you, Deborah? Have you got any other races this year, or is that it for you now for this year?
I've got the Halloween 100 with Saxons, Vikings and Normans in 2.5 weeks.
Right. That's 100 miles.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
I know that 3 weeks in between wasn't, it's just the way it worked out. So take it easy this week and then properly back into more training. I mean, I'll be out for 90 minutes, 22 hours each at the weekend maybe, but I'll see how my legs feel. Back in speed work next week, hopefully. And then there's Wendover Woods Night 50k, hopefully. North Downs Way 50 at the end of November, and then a couple more events with Saxons, Vikings and Normans before the end of the year, maybe 3.
Well, thank you so much for your sharing with us tonight. It's been really helpful. And there's lots of great lessons there that I'm sure our viewers, listeners will take on board as well. And I just want to say congratulations once again for the Autumn 100. And we wish you all the best for your hundreds that are coming up, the pair of you and other races that you've done. So thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Right, we've come to the end now of our episode 10 of Run to the Hills, and we hope you've enjoyed this special all about the Autumn 100. So, Eddie, how is your weekend looking? Any plans for the weekend and the coming week?
Crazy plans. Well, we have the Toussaint holiday, like the All Saints holiday in France here now for 2 weeks. So the kids have a 2-week half term. Yay. So we've got a few plans with them, and I'm just going to do one last long run this weekend to sort of finish off my South Downs Way that never was block. And then I think I'm not really sure. I don't know. Maybe we should ask the podcast listeners whether I set myself a little challenge to do a long run. I'm not sure how motivated I am to do anything, but maybe we should talk about that in the next podcast and see if anybody could suggest something. I did think about running up every chairlift in Morzine and back up and down like an orienteering champion, my own orienteering championship. But to be honest, my knees are a bit sore, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do all that downhill. So, but maybe I should do like a 50 miler or something to sort of like have some closure on the whole experience. So I'll think about that. I might put something on Facebook about that. So I want to do one long run to sort of finish the block so that I can then I'll have a little taper for maybe nothing. Who knows? Yeah. What about you?
Well, interesting. I've got the Hardmoors next week on Saturday, so I'm just going to have probably 2-3 just very easy runs. And just to let you know that next week's episode is going to be about planning. And we invited Dave Troman, who is a coach with Love to Run Coaching, lives in Keswick, good friend. And we actually did the interview this week, so it's all ready for next week's episode. And one of the things that it was with Dave and Eddie chatting together, and I was asking them questions. And we talked a little bit about tapering. One of the things that you said, Eddie, that I've really resonated with me was about, you said to your clients or people that you help, is to try and imagine what you want to be like on the start line, fresh, ready. And I thought that was really helpful. So that's going to be my mantra for this week. I want to try and be on the start line next Saturday at 8:46, ready to go from Guisborough, feeling relaxed and ready and feeling as though I'm a little bit undercooked. So that exactly. I'm not tired and I'm ready to go. So that's going to be my big aim for this week, is to try and get there on next Saturday morning. I'm John Kynaston. This was episode 10.
I'm Eddie Sutton, and let's run to the hills.